political center of gravity in Austin seems to have moved well to the right on abortion, on immigration, on guns on campuses. Evan Smith from the Texas Tribune joins us from Austin. Evan, talk about just how much of a difference the last election made.
Well, you know, we asked the question after last November, what does 101 Republicans mean? And now we know the answer. We expected that it meant that the legislative agenda expanded beyond the core issues that we thought would be of interest this session, the budget and redistricting and immigration, into things like abortion that we hadn't seen much of in the last couple sessions when the Republicans didn't have the votes to pass that kind of legislation. But as we sit here today, Rick, we're in the shadow of last night's 103 to 42 vote tentatively approving a bill requiring women to have sonograms before they can have abortions in Texas, one of the stricter abortion laws that will pass in this country among the 50 states. And it is, as you say, one of many things that is on the agenda this session that is likely to get through that would have been unthinkable 1 or 2 or 3 sessions ago because the baseline shift of the center has moved right. You know, what used to be left is now considered far left. What used to be considered center or moderate is now considered left. What used to be considered right is now considered center. And now the far right is actually in the mainstream of the Conservative Party. Everybody's axes have just been spinning as a result of this.
Well, part of that is clearly because of the way the last election was read.
Sure.
How much of it with the abortion issue, for example, has to do with the governor putting the sonogram issue as an emergency item,
right,
so that it could be considered in the first part when other bills cannot be considered? Right. Earlier, people who wanted to be able not to vote against such things, but would find ways to, in the rush of later legislation, get them kind of quietly buried. That's not so easy. How much of the dynamic has to do with that?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. You're smart to ask that question because there's no question that the process is structured this time to make it more likely to pass and to give fewer people an out. But the reality is this may well have passed later in the session as well, simply because the overwhelming number of Republicans who are in the House now and who supported it. Remember, 103 votes in favor. That included 6 Democrats who supported the bill and only 1 Republican opposed. They had a huge cushion. Even later in the session, with the process going the way it does, they very well may have passed this thing overwhelmingly. And again, abortion's just one issue. You have many immigration bills that are considered seriously to the right of where they've been in the past that may well get a hearing this time. You may see vouchers come back up, which is something in a normal session you wouldn't hear as well.
Yeah. Now, in the meantime, working on the budget, which is the huge issue of this year, we see more and more Republicans calling for tapping in to the rainy day fund. Just a little change in rhetoric from the governor on that.
Well, in fact, the governor is out on an island by himself on this, basically. You know, some of the conservative policy folks are with him, but the reality is everybody from Steve Ogden, the chair of the Senate Finance Committee, to Susan Combs yesterday, the comptroller, came out and said we need to tap the rainy day fund. John Zerwas, the Republican doctor from Simonton in the House, thinks we should do $8 billion of it. Bob Deuel and Kevin Eltife in the Senate from Greenville and Tyler, respectively, both think we should drain most or all of it. I mean, that's the emerging narrative now. We cannot possibly solve these problems without draining the rainy day fund. And this week we had Bob Deuel, again, no one's idea of a liberal, Rick, Republican from Greenville, come out for a 10-cent increase in the gasoline tax and possibly a broader sales tax. A Republican talking about tax increases. Maybe it's not such a right-wing session after all.
Well, it will unfold.
Yeah.
Evan, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick.
Hope you have a great week. Now, we've set up a link to the Texas Tribune website. Just go to klrn.org/TexasWeek.